Hello all and welcome, and I am the MGTOW philosopher. And in today's video, I'd like to talk about why feminism cannot and will not ever be able to turn the clock back to some earlier point, do a reset, and have feminism somehow magically work. Now, first things first, there's something that you have to understand about feminism. It's a lie. It was never intended as a way to achieve freedom for women or emancipate them from the non-existent patriarchy. No, it evolved out of the suffragette movement. Did you catch the word suffer in there? That's right. Women back in the 18th, early 19th century thought they were suffering. Yeah, so difficult to be a glorified nanny and cook food. Yes, women somehow were made to suffer. Now, their main goals were to get women to vote and give them a voice in the day-to-day goings-on in the country itself. An evil goal in and of itself is women have never done anything to earn the right to vote. Now, please keep in mind that I'm not saying that early feminism in the form of these idiotic suffragettes was somehow benign. No. They were as misguided as any other feminists who came along later in the 20th century. They were largely responsible for highly destructive laws such as prohibition, as well as the war on drugs, which is a major failure and cost us hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars, and thousands of lives lost. Before women got the vote, neither of these things were ever even under consideration. But to cater to their new voting base, politicians did what the ladies wanted. People who wanted to get elected made promises to push the agendas of women in exchange for women's votes. So, for those who think that those early women way back in the 1920s and 1930s were not feminists, well, you're mistaken. They were, no matter what they called themselves. They simply were not directly focused on destroying the family unit at that time. However, as you will see, as you can see, that was the eventual outcome, now wasn't it? For you see, the government started funding feminism through the CIA, and also various other organizations and private groups also started funding feminism. It was therefore pushed forward at a greater pace than it was advancing on its own. Pushed via certain outlets such as Miss Magazine and various other books and publications, with the desired result being the fracturing of the traditional family, which would have happened anyway, but not so quickly. In doing this, the global elites would create more taxpayers in the form of working women. This would also have the effect of lowering overall wages by doubling the size of the workforce. In addition, kids would have to go to school earlier and for longer periods of time, with the sole purpose being indoctrination and creating more loyalty to the state. You know, feminism was already bad, and it was getting worse. It told women that they were oppressed. It told women that they were equal to men. It told women that they could do whatever they wanted and be whatever they wanted. That isn't even true for men. We all have limitations based on us. We may not be smart enough or strong enough or have the resources to pursue our dreams. Yet early feminism was telling women they could have it all well before the government in the form of the CIA, as well as others outside the government, got involved. And while the CIA may have funded feminism, and while many other private citizens and organizations may have funded feminism, they didn't change it. You know, there's this idea that everyone, even those who are supposedly in the know on this subject, have in their heads that feminism was somehow more moderate, a more benign force, until these evil outside influences came into the picture and somehow co-opted it for their own evil ends. While it's true that these outside influences wanted feminism to succeed as it played into their agenda, they didn't change it. They just helped it grow a little faster and more efficiently. Feminism was never some mild or moderate movement, not ever. Of course, some feminists nowadays try to convince you that at one time it was moderate and reasonable as a whole. You know, they'll dial back the rhetoric and they'll throw out little caveats about how men and women are indeed different and men are getting a raw deal. I've talked about these broads before. They're all over the YouTube, these supposed champions of men and anti-feminists. But they're all feminists who consider themselves to be moderate members of the first and second wave. And they all push this idea that there's different kinds of feminism. some of which work, like first and second wave feminism, and some that don't, like the evil, dreaded third wavers. Yes, the early feminists supposedly only wanted the vote and equal opportunity. Yes, these so-called anti-feminists would have you believe that that was where the first and second wavers' aspirations ended. But that wasn't the end-all, be-all of it. Oh, no. For you see, women don't see the possible negative outcomes of their present actions, generally speaking. They function off emotion, not logic or reason. And emotion works poorly as a tool for gauging cause and effect. Emotion, you see, it's all about me, now, now, now. It's all about satisfying wants and desires in the moment. And that's all emotion is without the requisite logic and reason to balance things out. Desire, well, that has to be fed now. And you can't design society off of that. Yet feminism, through the power of the vote, has done exactly that. And it didn't even really need any outside funding to do that. Just time. And the logical end result is what we have now. Of course, you could try and argue that it never would have reached this stage of development left to its own devices. Yes, you could try to argue that. Yeah, people in the know like to tell themselves that without the interference of the global elites and other outside funding, that feminism never would have reached this point. It wouldn't be this extreme, this man-hating. It wouldn't be a global movement that's pushing socialism and cultural Marxism to the point where it will eventually destroy all Western society. Yeah, they like to tell themselves that. Well, I'm here to tell you different. Because at its heart, feminism is cultural Marxism. It's oppressor versus oppressed. It's an ideology that, taken to its logical conclusion, will end exactly where it has ended up now. For you see, feminism is no different than any other form of socialism. You know, you have all these idiots saying things like, oh, but that wasn't real socialism in Russia and Venezuela and Cambodia and Vietnam and Korea and Germany and Cuba. Oh, no, those places got it all wrong. Real socialism, well, it'll be a utopia on Earth. We just haven't found the right formula yet. But a right and workable formula does exist. It must exist. We just have to keep trying to find it because the idea itself is noble and laudable, and it can work. Yes, it can work, even though it hasn't worked anywhere else to date. But that's because those weren't real socialism. Of course, the first question I'd ask is this. If you've never seen real socialism at work, then how do you know what it is? How do you know what it looks like? And if you've never seen real socialism, and in addition to that, you've never seen it work firsthand, how do you know it would work to bring about some utopia in the first place? And how do you know that what you have seen to date isn't real socialism at work? How do you know we haven't been seeing real socialism all along? How do you know we haven't been seeing real feminism all along? Of course, the answer to that is that we do know, because we have been seeing real feminism and real socialism all along. Because if they were not real, well, we couldn't see them then, now could we? That said, these are all pointless questions, as the foundational premise of socialism, as with feminism, is flawed from the get-go. And that is the belief that you can make disparate groups equal simply by saying it's so, and of course by unfairly engineering society to give some people preference over others via the disenfranchisement and stealing from some so as to prop up others. Of course, socialism and feminism are the same animal, so of course they share everything in common, from their theft of resources, from those who have more, in this case men, to their need to equalize everyone at the expense of those who are most productive. Again, that being men. That's why feminism will never, ever work. And it's why the so-called moderate feminists, they're really no better than the radical ones. Because you see, for all their seemingly moderate views and their kinder take on men, the truth of the matter is that they share the same foundational views that all socialists and feminists share, that groups can be equalized. And no matter how different or more reasonable some of these more moderate so-called anti-feminists might be, in the end, they're still feminists. You can turn the clock back 100 years, but if you still gave women the right to vote, then nothing would change. Take away the CIA funding, Take away Miss Magazine and all the popular TV shows of the 1970s showing free, liberated women. Take away all the books and rags funded by outsider global elites looking to co-opt feminism for their own gains. Take all that away, and you'd still be more or less where we are now, with women running things and women screwing things up just for the sake of their own enfranchisement, and men getting the proverbial short end of the stick. Because socialism, it has one and only one foreseeable outcome, and that is the destruction of whatever civilization it takes hold in. Same goes for feminism and embracing gynocentrism. Because feminism has never worked. Not ever. Because it's just socialism by another name. I'm a woman, so I'm automatically oppressed. And because I've been oppressed, the system must be changed to right the wrongs that have been done to me. Sure, the righting of those wrongs will produce a system that'll be biased in my favor, since it was created to favor me, so as to help me catch up to and become equal to men, thereby making me not equal, but in fact superior. But that can't be helped. Meanwhile, my life will be better than any man's, and I'll have it so easy. And now that I have all this free stuff and an easy life, I don't want to give that up, so I'll continue doing what got me here. I'll continue to pretend to be disenfranchised, even though the opposite is true. I'll bitch and moan, not just to attain more power, but to keep what I and all women have gained. Because if we stop, even for an instant, we might lose our privilege. Sounds exactly like socialism to me, and that's never worked either. You know, you men out there, you need to stop listening to these so-called anti-feminists who peddle the idea that the only problem is something called third-wave feminism and not the real feminism, which is what they stand for. They're no different than the socialists who say they're for, quote-unquote, real socialism. No, the idea of feminism is flawed from the get-go. Because when you're dealing with two things in objective reality that are functional in nature, such as strength, speed, and intelligence, and you're trying to equalize those things, well, unless those things are already equal, meaning the same, how are you going to make them equal when they're biologically crafted by nature to be as they are? How are you going to make them the same unless you possess the ability to do very quickly what it took nature tens of millions of years to do? Will you do it through wishful thinking? Will you do it by pretending that those differences don't exist? Because you can't add traits to people. You can't add innate abilities, meaning things that are inherited biologically via evolution. You can't disassemble people and upgrade them like a sports car. You can't build whole new people who are equal to each other. However, what you can do is you can subtract, take away, so as to make someone who is greater than someone else in terms of objective functionality more equal to someone who is lesser than they are. Yes, you can do that, and you can also pretend. You can take away. You can minimalize the gifts and capabilities of those who are most able, so that those who are less able will be able to perform at their same level, or near the same level as those who had the gifts, traits, and abilities subtracted from them. But even then, you can only teach people to be less than they are capable of being, or not teach them how to take advantage of their innate gifts so as to be more. Beyond that, only make-believe is possible, a form of collective self-hypnosis where we all adhere to the same beliefs that allow us to ignore or just not see certain realities while embracing fantasy as if that was the reality. Yes, the subjective world of feelings-based reality, which is part and parcel of what feminism really is, meaning socialism. So perhaps now, all of you out there see why feminism never has worked and never will work. Because it's not real. And because eventually you'll run out of other people's money, which is what allows you to keep the fairy tale going in the first place. And at that point, everything will just collapse. And for those of you who think that you can have socialism light, where feminists just get the right to vote and have the same opportunities as men, and that their power would end there, I say think again. It would not end there. Because just look around you. That's not what happened. They got the vote, and they used it to vote themselves every benefit on earth, while leaving men practically destitute.
Oh, but that's just the fault of those evil third-wave feminists. They're not real feminists. No, we first and second wavers. We're the real feminists. If feminism had just been left alone to progress without being hijacked by those damn third wavers and those other outside sources, it would have developed into a benign movement that didn't steal everything for the enfranchisement of women. It would have become something other than what it is now, something pure and noble, like what we real feminists believe. Wrong. Feminism is socialism, and socialism doesn't work. It always leads to the so-called oppressed stealing everything from the so-called oppressors until nothing is left to produce much of anything, and bread costs $1 billion. And there's no such thing as feminism light. No first or second wave, or whatever you want to call it, that can stop that progression towards failure and collapse. Because those so-called waves, they're just stages that are part of the natural progression of what is really cultural Marxism, aka socialism. No, you can't dial back the clock to a more moderate socialism, aka feminism, because you can't have moderate socialism or feminism in the first place. It just doesn't work that way, and it never will. Both the baby and the bathwater are poison, and they both have to be thrown out. It's time to start anew, and to do so without feminism/socialism. So please, I implore you guys out there, stop believing the words of these so-called moderate anti-feminists, as they call themselves, that you see popping up on YouTube. What they say might sound good on the surface and might give you some hope, but they're all cut from the same cloth. They're all feminists seeking to sell you snake oil. Please like and subscribe to my channel. Give me a thumbs up and donate to my Patreon if you feel so inclined. You'll find a link in both the last 20 seconds of this video and in the description. I am the MGTOW philosopher, and I wish you a good day. Take care.